Hey everyone, this is Khara back on another video. I have my friend and colleague Kim with us. Hi, Kim.
Hi.
Kim has a group practice that, well, some of you actually know her. I mean, she's kind of a mini celebrity now that she's been in a documentary on money. So that's also really cool. But if you don't know her, you need to know her because she's built a group practice that serves women, which is awesome. We're here to talk about a book that was in alignment with both of our goals of serving women, and your team actually did a training with me on this topic. Are you willing to share some impressions about women in estrangement and how common that is? Because that's
Yeah,
kind of our mutual interest right now.
absolutely. Yeah, I'm excited to talk for sure.
Yeah. So tell people about your business first, and then we can jump into that.
Okay. I have two businesses. I have a psychotherapy practice in the Colorado. It's now Colorado. It used to be Denver, but now we're all virtual, so Colorado. And we serve women, clients that are on Medicaid as well as, the rest of the population. Um, and we support women healing from trauma as well as attachment wounds, mainly.
Mhm.
So like anxious attachment styles and avoidant and all that good stuff. And I
Yeah.
have a business, and I mainly do business coaching in that business.
Yeah. So you're a powerhouse in your own right. And this attachment trauma is what I was just so impressed by your team when I got to meet them. They're all very conscious of attachment trauma, family of origin stuff. And so we were able to kind of like nerd out over like what we're seeing in the patterns with women who are like, I'm willing to do this therapeutic or healing work. So anything you want viewers to know about what you're noticing with women right now?
Yeah, I mean, definitely women are coming more into their power, and I think recognizing the ways that they've been sort of oppressed and how that lives in their system. And yeah, for our practice, we focus a lot on attachment. I think the word trauma is a very well-known word at this point, like the idea of trauma, but attachment is the next piece of things, which is the way that we understand the world through belief systems based on how we experienced our relationships with our parents, our caregivers, our communities as a child.
Right. Right. So powerful too, of like just like the ripple effect all of that has on a woman who's working on herself or coming into therapy or coaching.
Totally. Yeah. It's like it relates to everything. It's a huge part of what I do in business coaching too, is like unpacking belief systems that get in the way of people's ability to expand into their potential.
Yeah, absolutely. So back last year when I got this contract to write a book on mother-daughter estrangement, I thought of you because I knew who you were working with and who you were serving. And I had actually like reached out to a couple different colleagues and actually interviewed a couple different people to be like, what do I need to put in this book? What do I need to talk about? So attachment trauma is absolutely in it. But we also started to then talk about how do we train clinicians on talking about these topics, specifically estrangement. So what is your sense of how often mother-daughter relationships are moving towards estrangement? Like, I know that's a loaded question, but like, is that something you're seeing based on trauma, attachment trauma?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, it's a decent part of the relationships that my clients have. I don't know what percentage is, if I had to put a percentage, maybe like 25% of people I work with are either disconnected from a mom or a dad or somebody important in their family.
Mhm.
I think it's a big deal. And even if it's not like total estrangement, like total disconnection, there's still uh, I'm always working with clients on their relationship and their boundaries, and they're individuating from their parents psychologically. So like, what does their relationship look like once they find wellness within themselves, once they like
Right.
release the patterns that are ingrained in them when they're young.
Yeah. So I imagine that's such powerful work for them to start thinking about that individuation, that separation emotionally or physically. Like, obviously, you and I aren't like championing estrangement by any means. I think that's important to name in this video of like, but we see the purpose of it for some folks that are needing to implement boundaries. Would you say that's true for the people you're
Yeah,
serving?
I think for some people, it is the right choice to not be connected to their parents. And for some people, it's boundaries. And for some people, it's strong boundaries. And there's that spectrum. And it really just depends on the situation and how, you know, abusive the relationships are, how hard it is on a client to
Mhm.
cope in life when they're in relationship in these difficult sort of like dysfunctional or traumatic relationships.
Right, right, exactly. And so I felt honored when you were willing to let me test drive this book's content on your team because I knew that they all supported women in different parts of their relationships with family. And I don't know if you have some key takeaways from listening in on that training or from the team themselves. I'm like putting you on the spot, but
No, you're good.
what that
You're
was
good.
like.
Yeah, no, it was, I mean, for one, like it was just nice to learn in a team environment, you know. We always appreciate that. And I think being able to talk about that topic is something that we all experience with our clients. And it's not something that's like talked about frequently in a clinical setting, or a clinical team setting. So yeah, being able to kind of like identify the pieces of the cycle, the pieces of, or the kind of like aspects of what would cause estrangement when it's right, like all of those different examination points were really helpful for us as a team for sure.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like I learned as much from your team as they learned from me, and that we were sharing, like crafting this story of a person, right? I mean, I called her Gina, but she's like a accumulation of different people that I've done this work around, and having your team contribute, like, oh, and this is something we might also hear from that client who's going through this stage, or oh, this is something they might say or do or share, was super helpful for me as someone who wants to train people in this, but also really I think resonated with your team of like, oh, this is what I'm thinking of a client I had right now who's going through something like this. So I thought that was a really powerful experience both ways as they
Yeah.
shared of like, oh, that's me or oh, that's my client. And so yeah, there's those 8 stages of the estrangement energy cycle. And for listeners or viewers of this video, like again, we're not here to champion estrangement. It's more about like looking at both sides of the coin of like why would someone choose to estrange? What has to be at play versus what's it look like to reconcile if that's the goal that they have. So as therapists and professionals, I know that we're not here to like give an opinion of like you should estrange or you should reconcile, but to really hold that safe space for a client to consider both options. Would you say
Yeah,
that's relatively true for your team as well?
absolutely. I mean, I can definitely identify that experience from the therapist seat many times in my work with clients, being able to hold
Mm-hmm.
space and help them make decisions about what to do in relationship to their family and whether disconnection is right. And that's a really, really tough decision. It's extremely stressful. So it's an important conversation.
Mm-hmm. And I appreciate you naming how stressful it is because I think that there's some assumptions in the community at large that people make decisions to estrange as impulsive or as like vindictive or manipulative, and really it's this long process that's full of grief and questioning and the what ifs of should I continue in the relationship, should I actually estrange? Like there's so much to that people don't see
Yeah.
for people doing this work. So and as you named earlier, not many of us are talking about it in a clinical setting. So that's why I want to offer a training on this topic for folks. And your team was one of the first to try it out. So for anyone watching this video, that is something I'm going to continue to offer is these heartfelt trainings around looking at all aspects of someone looking to estrange, specifically daughters, adult daughters is kind of the focus, but estrangement in general. Any last thoughts for viewers when it comes to just like things they should consider when holding space for a client who's considering boundaries or estrangement?
Yeah, I think that was probably, from my perspective, the most helpful part of the workshop. I don't know what to call it, training that we had with you was ideas about how to best support a client, both from a therapist perspective, but just from like a family or human perspective, like
Mhm.
what is most helpful for them in understanding and having compassion for somebody that's going through something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for saying that. Recently I kind of drilled it down to like, what do we say to someone who says they're not speaking to a family member versus what do we do for someone who's navigating a trauma anniversary, a family focused holiday, or a milestone where families should be present and isn't, right? Like these are kind of the things people are asking me right now. Like, what do I say to someone? I'm like, I'm at a dinner party. I don't know what to say to them when I say, I'm not talking to my parent. So yeah, I think that's definitely something to continue in the trainings that I'm offering is to flush that out, help people understand what to say and what not to say. So there's plenty
Yeah.
of harm happening when we say the wrong thing. So yeah, so for anyone watching this video, lots of things to think about. I hope you'll check out the book, Understanding Ruptured Mother-Daughter Relationships, but also reach out to me if you would like a training on some else aspect of mother-daughter relationships, estrangement, attachment trauma. And obviously, Kim's team is also a wonderful resource for that, for the one-on-one work or for some coaching possibly around that. So any final thoughts or I guess how do people reach you, Kim? That would be a good thing for
Oh,
people to
yeah,
know.
sure. My practice is bravecounseling.com, my psychotherapy practice, and my coaching business is kimmassale.com.
Yep. So last name, you'll see Kim's last name below the video here. I'll make sure you have links for her work. But thanks for having this conversation with me, Kim, and just talking about mother daughters and attachment and estrangement. Because again, all relevant, but not necessarily things people are talking about except for with their clients. So
Right. So
thank you for being here. I appreciate it.
of course, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Viewers, stay tuned for more videos. Let me know if you have questions about mother daughter estrangement. We'll see you next time.